Still to come. From 4, it's Janice Long. At 3, Trevor Nelson. Right now, it's Newsbeat.
BBC Radio 1 Vintage. Radio 1.
I'm Richard Skinner. I know why Newsbeat was started. It wasn't that Radio 1 was desperate to have a news programme, but commercial radio was starting. They didn't want to get caught, Radio 1, with their pants down. They did not want the MPs to say, the BBC, public money, are not providing... And so they decided that they'd give it a go. I was working at Radio Solent, the BBC local station on the south coast, and little to my knowledge, 2 future Newsbeat producers were cruising the entire country trying to find people who'd be suitable to broadcast on Newsbeat. And they happened to catch me on a shift in which I read the news and then presented an hour-long pop show of new releases. And they turned the car round in Winchester and came back to Southampton. This is astounding, really. What a luck. Came into the building as I finished my show and said, would you like to audition for Radio 1's new news programme? And, I took a millisecond and said yes.
And as we get into the last Newsbeat of this remarkable day, Mr Wilson's Labour Party has the narrowest...
So we weren't technically news. We were not news. We were a current affairs magazine programme, which meant silly things like we weren't allowed to read the news headlines ourselves. But so we had all these venerable newsreaders coming in, men probably, I thought they were ancient, so they were probably 60. And they come in and read the news like that in the middle of this really kind of relaxed show. Big stories, oh gosh, stories like the 3-day week, which was happening in the early days of Newsbeat. There were power cuts and terrible problems, rubbish piling up in the streets, and I was sent out to do interviews with senior ministers in Downing Street. Barbara Castle, who was a big minister at the time, and I turned up in my bomber jacket and jeans, and she said, the BBC's changed.
There's been reaction on both sides of the Atlantic to the murder earlier this morning of the former Beatle John Lennon.
When John Lennon died, the night before, I'd gone to bed listening to the BBC World Service, and then about 3 or 4 in the morning, I woke up, and it was still burbling on, but it was in German. Now, I did German at O-level, and so I heard this guy saying, Beatle John Lennon ist tot in New York, and I went, tot? Dead? So I got the crash list and I called 3 producers, the editor, and I saw that I had Paul McCartney's Sussex telephone number. So I rang it, and a voice that wasn't Paul McCartney, a man's voice, said, yeah, and I said, got some really bad news. Are you aware that John Lennon has been shot dead? And I had the sad honour of telling the McCartney household that John Lennon was dead. An honour I wish I never had, but there you go. On the 13th of July, 1985, I was in the football commentary gantry at Wembley Stadium, and it was about 10 to 12 noon. We were preparing for Live Aid, and about 4 minutes or 5 minutes to go, they suddenly realised that the Prince and Princess of Wales, who were meant to be arriving at 12, were late. They were caught in the traffic. So we had to change the opening, and so we had to come up with something to say at 12 o'clock. And my producer, Trevor Dan, and I sat down, and he thought of an old intro for a programme called Two-Way Family Favourites, where they used to say, it's 12 noon in London, 1 p.m. in Munich. And he adapted this into, it's 12 noon in London, 7 a.m. in Philadelphia, and all that sort of stuff. And that was going to be the opening announcement of Live Aid, and I was going to announce it.
12 noon in London, 7 a.m. in Philadelphia, and around the world, it's time for Live Aid.
Which I hadn't known I was going to do until that minute. It was the biggest audience at that time for anything ever in the world. No one had broadcast to a bigger audience, even more than Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. I don't know what's happened since, but I did hang on to that for a long time. It's remarkable how much the current Newsbeat still sounds like the 1980s Newsbeat, certainly. It's not moved on that much, but I suspect technically it's an entirely different world.
Radio 1 Newsbeat. 97 to 99 FM. Radio 1 Newsbeat.
And on the Tea Time Newsbeat, we'll be meeting the young wife who's been named as Britain's champion booty maker. As the underwater experts report on what went wrong for Pisces 3, we ask, how safe is it for our divers? And if you think our prices are going up fast, listen to the problems of a country where everything has gone up 5 times in price this year.
As Prime Minister, I want to speak to you simply and plainly about the grave emergency now facing our country. We are asking you to cut down to the absolute minimum the use of electricity for heating and for other purposes in your homes. We are limiting the use of electricity by almost all factories, shops and offices to 3 days a week.
There may be a power cut and the candles burn down low, but something inside of me says the bad news isn't so.
As many of you will have heard already, Her Majesty the Queen agreed today to my request that Parliament should be dissolved. As a result, there will now be a general election on February the 28th.
And as we get into the last Newsbeat of this remarkable day, Mr Wilson's Labour Party has the narrowest of leads over the Tories. Just 5 seats. There are 10 more results to come, so Election 74 has produced a deadlock. The 2 giant parties are neck and neck, with an assorted bag of 30 Liberals, Nationalists and Ulster members holding them to possible ransom.
So, how are the leaders taking it? First, Mr Heath at his own constituency, Sidcup.
I'm not going to comment on the results as far as the national situation is concerned. I'll comment on them tomorrow when the position is absolutely clear.
You want to wait until everything is decided before you say anything?
Yes, I do, yes.
Can I ask you lastly what your plans are now, Mr Heath?
I'm going back to London.
To the Conservative Central Office?
No, I'm going back to number 10.
And finally, for Labour, Mr Wilson.
In the situation the country is facing, it is of paramount importance that a government be quickly formed to get the country back to full-time work in order to be able to deal with the pressing economic problems which face us both at home and abroad.
Good evening. This is the 37th time I have spoken to you from this office, where so many decisions have been made that shaped the history of this nation. Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
As you know, Her Majesty the Queen has agreed to my request that Parliament should be dissolved on Friday, and the general election will be held on Thursday, the 10th of October. It will be, of course, the second general election this year, something very few people, politicians or not, would want to see at a time of grave economic difficulties. But the result of that first election in February made the calling of another inevitable, and sooner rather than later. It is manifestly essential in the wider national interest that Parliament should now give a lead to the country. For
more than 1,000 fans crammed into the tiny sandstone church, and another 1,000 waited patiently outside. They ranged from tiny babies to children to the Teds in their full uniforms, and of course the old people of North London. They'd come from all over the city, and many arrived red-eyed and distraught. The singing of Presley's favourite hymn, Amazing Grace, was just too much for the packed congregation, and hardened men in full teddy boy uniforms cried openly with their wives and children. As fans fainted, the organiser of this service, Caroline Ackland tried to sum up their emotions.
I just want to thank you. I think it's fantastic. It's just so fantastic that you've all come. Just don't believe it. But I just wish you weren't here.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now.
Well, we wanted to get in and see it on the only unreserved show, and it's booked through on the bookable shows right until March, and we couldn't afford to wait that long. And the prestige of being able to say you've seen Star Wars is something akin to royalty, really.
Whoever wrote it had a fantastic imagination.
I think it was good.
You think? Just good?
No, fantastic. It was exciting, but I didn't like the bit when the man chopped off the person's arm.
Why not?
Because there was blood.
Oh, but don't we like blood?
No.
Oh, too bad.
Mrs. Margaret Thatcher is the new Prime Minister. This afternoon she went to Buckingham Palace to accept the Queen's commission to form the new Tory government. And on her arrival at number 10 Downing Street this afternoon, she had this to say to the crowd and reporters waiting outside about how she felt.
Very excited, very aware of the responsibilities. Her Majesty, the Queen, has asked me to form a new administration, and I would just like to remember some words of St. Francis of Assisi, which I think are really just particularly apt at the moment. Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
Reasons to be cheerful. Part 3. Reasons to be cheerful. Part 3. Reasons to be cheerful. Part 3. Reasons to be cheerful. 1, 2, 3.
Radio 1 News.
There's been reaction on both sides of the Atlantic to the murder earlier this morning of the former Beatle John Lennon. He was shot dead outside his home in New York, and soon afterwards hundreds of fans gathered outside the building and spent the night in a vigil. His wife, Yoko Ono, put out a statement saying, "John loved and prayed for the human race. Please do the same for him."
It's been too long since we took the time. No one's to blame. I know time flies so quickly.
Meanwhile, in New York, the investigation into the murder is underway. The police have now arrested a man. Our reporter Tom Brooke told us about the man who they're holding.
He's a 25-year-old Hawaiian called Mark Chapman. Apparently, he turned up outside the Dakota apartment building yesterday afternoon with Lennon's new record and got Lennon to autograph it. And he was waiting for Lennon when he returned after a recording session last night. And he approached him. There was some altercation. We're not quite sure what went on. And then he fired 5 shots into him. And the first shot fatally wounded him.
Still special. Let's take a chance and fly away somewhere.
This morning, the people of Brixton in South London are counting the cost of a weekend of violence in which nearly 200 people were injured and property damage to the tune of millions of pounds. The height of the violence came on Saturday night, and as our community relations correspondent John Clare reports, police action up till then had been fairly well ordered and disciplined.
By around 9 o'clock, a lot of the police were feeling angry, frustrated, frightened, and probably humiliated. So when they did manage to get in among the rioters, they were pretty forceful about it, especially with the Rastafarians who wear their hair in long dreadlocks, which make a powerful handhold. I also saw a good deal of unauthorised police behaviour. I saw a number of policemen throwing bricks back at the rioters, for example.
Charles Philip Arthur George.
I, Charles Philip Arthur George.
Take thee, Diana Francis.
Take thee, Diana Francis.
To my wedded wife.
To my wedded wife.
To have and to hold.
To have and to hold.
From this day forward.
This day forward.
For better, for worse.
For better, for worse.
For richer, for poorer.
For richer, for poorer.
In sickness and in health.
In sickness and in health.
To love and to cherish.
To love and to cherish.
Till death us do part.
Till death us do part.
Once I ran to you, now I run from you. This tainted love you've given, I give you all a boy could give you. Take my tears and that's not nearly all. Tainted love, tainted love.
The Falkland Islands are under the military rule of Argentina tonight. A force of more than 2,000 men, backed up by a naval squadron of 15 ships, took over the islands earlier today. Britain has broken off diplomatic relations with Argentina, and the United Nations Security Council is holding an emergency session. The invasion has been greeted with jubilation in the Argentine capital, Buenos Aires. The 80 British Marines on the islands surrendered after offering some resistance.
She was always good with children. One of the things the children in this class like to do is to go in and help in the nursery school. And if you say who would like to go in, you may be sure Diana's hand would have gone up first.
So the baby has special meaning to this school?
Oh, very much so. They almost would like to adopt it.
Congratulations and jubilations. We thank Diana for having a baby boy.
I was a miner, I was a docker, I was a railwayman between the wars. I raised a family in time of austerity with sweat at the foundry between the wars. I paid the union, and as times got harder, I looked to the government to help the working man. But they brought prosperity down at the armoury. We're arming for peace, me boys, between the wars.
Finally, on March the 3rd, 3 days short of what would have been the strike's first anniversary, Arthur Scargill waved the white flag.
The strike itself will be over on Tuesday and there'll be a disciplined vote.
At that moment, even the hardliners turned on their leader.
I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the tremendous solidarity.
These were the men who hadn't seen a wage packet for a full year, who'd manned the picket lines and had to rely on soup kitchens and handouts to feed themselves and their families.
Sweet moderation, heart of this nation, desert us not, we are between the wars.
Radio 1 Vintage.
Still to come.
Nelson Mandela freed from jail just a few hours ago in South Africa.
I greet you all in the name of peace.
British pilots say they won't fly over the new year to countries where the millennium bug could cause air traffic control systems to to crash.
To everyone in every city and village in the world watching as we begin, welcome to London.
Radio 1 Vintage.
It's 12 noon in London, 7 a.m. in Philadelphia, and around the world it's time for Live Aid. 16 hours of live music in aid of famine relief in Africa. Wembley welcomes their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Live Aid, the global jukebox. At some time or another on that seemingly endless summer day, 1,500 million people in 160 countries tuned in to the twin spectacle at Wembley and Philadelphia.
Everybody was crying around me, you know. I just thought, Christ, what a noise, you know. And I think then the scale of the thing hit me when I saw all those people and the atmosphere of the thing, you know. It's not like any other rock gig I've been to.
At 7:30, Janet Trubin reporting. All 7 American astronauts on board the Space Shuttle Challenger are presumed dead after an explosion which blew the shuttle to pieces shortly after takeoff from Cape Canaveral in Florida. One of the crew was a civilian, a woman schoolteacher. The disaster, the worst in space history, was seen by horrified television viewers all over the United States.
These people were dedicated to the exploration of space. We could do no more to honor them than to go forward with the program.
Don't you care? And you are the only one to stop my tears. And I'm so scared of this love. And if all that there is this fear of being used, I should go back to being lonely and confused. If I could, I would, I swear. Radio 1
In the newsroom, Ian Parkinson.
The Americans have offered to help the Russians after the major nuclear accident in the Ukraine. It happened at the Chernobyl power station north of the city of Kiev. The Soviet authorities have admitted that the accident, thought to be the most serious in the history of nuclear power, caused some casualties, but they haven't given details of them. Experts are now trying to assess the implications of the accident. An energy expert from Newcastle University, Professor Ian Fells, says it's worrying that the authorities in Sweden have detected radioactive cesium in the cloud that's been spread over the country.
Cesium is much more worrying. It suggests a more serious accident, and it also has a half-life of 30 years. And that means if it's got onto agricultural land and that sort of thing in the vicinity of the power station, then it will put it out of action for a long time. It's not good for people either, and it gets into the food supply possibly, and that's what people would have to be very careful about.
For the first time, a court has convicted someone for letting loose a computer virus. It happened in America. Texan Donald Burlaston infected his employer's computer with a virus shortly before he left. It destroyed thousands of dollars worth of information before it was tracked down. But the fear is that computer viruses are spreading and could run completely out of control.
Well, I wasn't actually driving on the road. I had parked my car at my friend's house, got out, was delivering the Christmas present. I just lifted the Christmas present from out of the car, and I heard this noise. It was just a horrific droning noise. It was very deep, but very piercing. And then after that, I just saw, with the lights of Lockerbie, the V shape and the nose was lit up as it hit the ground.
Did it look like an aircraft?
Yes. It looked like a big aircraft.
It was like liquid fire started to rain down on the car, and bits of concrete and debris, and we even found a piece of the aluminium buried in the car.
Over to the newsroom and Alan Robb.
93 people are now known to have been crushed to death and at least 200 injured during the FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest at Sheffield Wednesday's Hillsborough ground. Most of the casualties were young men and children.
People were shouting for help. They were shouting to the front to open the gates, to let them be dragged out. You could see that it wasn't an ordinary crush. There was something wrong.
Everywhere, each with their own secret care. So ferry across the Mersey and always take me there, the place I love. FM Radio 1.
These are truly remarkable scenes taking place here tonight on the eastern side of the Berlin Wall at Checkpoint Charlie. Hundreds of people have gathered here in the hope of getting across in the light of the new concessions which have been announced, allowing East Germans to cross to West Germany through the Berlin Wall and across the Iron Curtain frontier between the two Germanys.
I think it is a very, very important day.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. It's great. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Because I am born here in the city and I'm waiting to be free in the city. This is history. I mean, this is the day where the world is going. He sees she's crying. Yeah. I mean, this is it.
Nelson Mandela, freed from jail just a few hours ago in South Africa, has made his first public speech in 27 years at a rally in Cape Town.
Comrades and fellow South Africans, I greet you all in the name of peace, democracy and freedom for all.
Me with your questions, you haven't told no lies. You're always asking what it's all about. Don't listen to my replies. You say to me I don't talk enough, but when I do I'm a fool. These times I spent I've realized I'm gonna shoot through and leave you the things you say. Your purpose just give you away the things you say. You're unbelievable.
From May the 1st, you'll be able to listen to Radio 1 24 hours a day. The new overnight service will be broadcast only on FM, and the breakfast show will start half an hour earlier at 6 o'clock. 1FM's controller, Johnny Beerling.
When we were on 247 and all of that on the medium wave, the signal after dark was quite frankly terrible, and half the people couldn't have heard it anyway. Now we're on FM, we're up to 90% of the population being able to hear us clearly in good quality stereo, so now's the time to do it.
You're unbelievable.
It's taken 7 years and £10 billion. It's been delayed countless times and it still needs tests before the public can use it. But today, the Channel Tunnel is officially open.
I like very much the crossing to England on the ship, and I don't feel like using the tunnel at all. But now it's built, it must be a success for Calais.
I think it's a good thing. It gives life and a lot of people and a lot of pleasure. And I like English people.
99 FM. Radio 1 Newsbeat.
O.J. Simpson has walked free from a court in LA after being found not guilty of murdering his ex-wife Nicole and her friend Ronald Goldman. There was jubilation outside the court as the verdict was announced.
O.J. Simpson not guilty of...
The prosecution expressed profound disappointment with the verdict. LA's district attorney is Gil Garcetti.
This case was fought as a battle for victims of domestic violence. We hope this verdict does not discourage the victims who are out there throughout our communities, throughout this country, from seeking help.
Hours are ticking away to the first draw in the National Lottery. The jackpot's at £5 million because so many tickets have been snapped up. And if you haven't yet picked your lucky numbers, there are plenty of people making their own small fortunes with tips on how you could be quids in tomorrow night.
There is a guaranteed way of winning.
You can call it mystic, you can call it magic, you can call it anything you want.
It's a PC program. The idea of it is to predict the winning numbers in the National Lottery.
That's the fanfare that'll tell you if you're a winner on Saturday night.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down.
The new music. 97 to 99 FM. Radio 1 Newsbeat.
When the curtain falls, it's time to get off the stage, and that is what I propose to do.
John Major moves out and steps down as leader of the Conservative Party. The full story of a night that made history, the first change of government in Britain for 18 years.
Newsbeat, Election 97. Radio 1.
A landslide for Labour.
Seismic shift. We can get back to trying to be one nation again. Regroup, unite, and begin the fight back.
We are the largest force of Liberals and Liberal Democrats that we've had since the days of Lloyd George.
I've been waiting for this day for 18 years.
Tony Blair is the bee's knees, brilliant.
The force was with us.
So right, okay, we lost.
It's Blair.
'Cause it's a bittersweet symphony that's life. Trying to make ends meet, you're a slave to money, then you die. I'll take you down the only road I've ever been down. You know, the one that takes you to the places where all the things meet, yeah.
New music first. 97 to 99 FM. Radio 1 Newsbeat.
Diana, Princess of Wales, is in a Paris hospital this morning after a car crash that's claimed the life of her friend Dodi Fayed. The driver of the princess's car is also dead. The accident happened just after midnight. Kevin Connolly is in Paris.
Witnesses said it seemed their car was being pursued by paparazzi photographers on motorbikes immediately before the accident, which happened at the entrance to a tunnel on an expressway which runs beside the River Seine.
Buckingham Palace has confirmed that Diana, Princess of Wales, is dead. She died after a car crash in Paris that's also claimed the life of the princess's friend Dodi Fayed. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said the Queen and the Prince of Wales were deeply shocked and distressed by the terrible news.
Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the grace that placed itself where lives were torn apart. Goodbye, England's rose, from a country lost without your soul, who missed the wings of your compassion more than you'll ever know. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind. sunset when the rain set in, and your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will. Your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Newsbeat, the word on the world.
Bill Clinton has again denied having an affair with young White House worker Monica Lewinsky. The US president turned up at a press conference about childcare in Washington to declare his innocence. Newsbeat's Peter Bowes is in the United States.
With the First Lady Hillary at his side, an angry-looking president made his point.
I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
97 to 99 FM.
Radio 1.
British pilots say they won't fly over the new year to countries where the millennium bug could cause air traffic control systems to crash. As Newsbeat's Judy Hobson reports, parts of Africa and Eastern Europe are most at risk.
Passports and tickets, please. BALPA, the organisation which represents 7,000 pilots, is looking at aircraft, airports and control systems all around the world to check they're safe. If systems go down, it's the pilot's job to get you out of trouble. Kieran Daly's editor of Air Transport Intelligence.
The pilot does what the controller tells him to do. The whole secret to the system is that the controller can keep a mental image of where all the aircraft were when the outage occurred and can still guide the aircraft to the right place.
Airbus and Boeing aircraft have all passed the Millennium test. Others are being checked out. But what could go wrong?
If you reach a stage where the pilots are having to take the decisions about what to do next, then that's where things do start to become quite frightening, because they do not have a way under normal circumstances of knowing where other aircraft are.
BALPA hopes the survey will reassure people about travelling at New Year, although most people here at Manchester Airport seemed confident they'd be safe.
I don't think there's enough clever people knocking about to sort this out.
I think they've probably looked into this for years and years anyway, so I think everything should be fine.
If there's even a slight risk, then no.
I don't feel secure flying anyway, so it won't bother me on Millennium either.
I would wait until the day after New Year, and then if anything does go to cock, I will stay at home.
It might not be working, but that's a chance you've got to take. You take a chance every day, and I don't know why you won't take it at the Millennium.
Radio 1 Vintage.
You're listening to Radio 1 Vintage, and up next, it's me, Trevor Nelson. See you in about 20 minutes.
Radio 1 Vintage.
Radio 1.
The time is 2:31 with the news, Claire Bradley.
The World Trade Center in New York is on fire after being hit by two passenger planes.
Radio 1.
Newsbeat. Two aeroplanes have crashed into the tallest buildings in New York, the World Trade Center. Smoke and flames are billowing from both towers. There have been two massive explosions. The side of one of the towers was blown out in a ball of flames. The BBC's Steve Evans was in one of the towers.
You couldn't quite call it panic, but clearly people were very, very frightened. Smoke started appearing everywhere on the ground floor, as though a mist had suddenly descended. People initially were in tears and physically shaking. People initially obviously thought it was a bomb. Everybody fled. The authorities were very calm, just saying, just get out that way, just get out that way.
There's no news on any casualties so far. Jane Beresford, who was in a local park, also saw what happened.
There wasn't any great sort of panic at that time. And then you saw flames raging through the building, and then approximately sort of 15, 20 minutes later, a plane flew down right above us, so very, very close to our heads, and smashed right into the other tower. It's a massive explosion, people screaming, and sort of panic. There wasn't even many fire ambulances.
American and British forces have launched a relentless series of airstrikes against Afghanistan. They hit 30 military targets in retaliation for the attacks on New York and Washington that claimed more than 5,000 lives.
These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations. We will not waver. We will not tire. We will not falter. And we will not fail.
America's launched the first military strikes in the war against Iraq. It was fairly low-key and seems to have been a direct attempt to hit Saddam Hussein himself or his other senior officials. In a moment, we'll get the details from our reporters here and in the Gulf. Let's go to Newsbeat's Liza Booth now in Kuwait. She reports on how the initial attack against targets in Baghdad started.
It began just before 3 a.m. UK time. That's 6 in the morning in Baghdad. Air raid sirens sounded across the city. Then they went silent, and anti-aircraft weapons started firing into the sky.
Ridding the world of Saddam would be an act of humanity. It is leaving him there that is inhumane.
1 million people staged a demonstration in London on Saturday. Stop the war!
There is another way. They don't have to make war. It's just that's the easiest way, so they're going for it.
It's just using a lot of different reasons, like for the oil and everything.
The war's stupid because there could be something else done. It doesn't have to be all violent.
Give peace a chance.
People killing, people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying. Can you practice what you preach and would you turn the other cheek? Father, 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 help us, send some guidance from above. These people got me questioning, where is the love?
The greatest always was, always will be. That's one of the thousands of tributes to Radio 1's John Peel, who died last night. He was 65 and had a heart attack on holiday in Peru. But first, let's hear from Andy Parfitt. He's the controller here at Radio 1.
I feel bereft, and everyone at Radio 1 feels bereft that, John's not here.
He'll be incredibly missed here, won't he?
Totally and completely irreplaceable. I don't know what we're going to do.
Whatever happened to the values of humanity? Whatever happened to the fairness and equality? Instead of spreading love, we're spreading animosity. Lack of understanding leading us away from unity. That's the reason why sometimes I'm feeling under. That's the reason why sometimes I'm feeling down. It's no wonder why sometimes I'm feeling under. Gotta keep my faith alive till love is found.
People killing, people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying. When you practice what you preach and would you turn the other cheek? Father, 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 help us, send some guidance from above. These people got me questioning, where is the love? Where is the love?
Good evening. More than 11,000 people are now thought to have been killed in southern Asia after an undersea earthquake sent enormous waves rolling across the Indian Ocean. The quake measured 8.9 on the Richter scale, the biggest in the world for 40 years. Waves up to 10 metres high engulfed the coasts of many countries.
We didn't realize, we just saw a water plane coming up and towards the building and people from outside screaming, and then we saw the water come in the building and very fast.
We saw this enormous tidal wave approaching the beach, and people started to run, and suddenly it was complete chaos, people running and screaming as the wave hit.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kinda funny, I find it kinda sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world.
This is Radio 1's Newsbeat.
A series of bomb blasts in central London has killed at least 33 people. Hundreds more are injured. Police have confirmed there were 4 explosions at the end in the morning rush hour. 3 of them were on tube trains. These people were caught up in it.
There was a big flash, a loud bang, lots of smoke, and there's a train on the other track that stopped as well. Lots of screaming.
There was just this explosion in carriage next door. And then there was just all this smoke and you couldn't breathe.
I turned around, there was smoke, and next minute I heard people screaming and whatnot, and yeah, I seen people all been carried out, and I seen blood all over the path up there, and I seen people crying and screaming, people running, total pandemonium.
I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad.
Where we were, here in the centre of Atlanta, Georgia, the moment this city found out Barack Obama had been elected as America's first black president. People were dancing in the streets, fireworks were set off, and some were crying with joy.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer.
Shot City. Coming home again. Do you think about me now and then? Yeah. Do you think about me now and then? 'Cause I'm coming home again. I met this girl when I was 3 years old, and what I love most, she had so much soul. She said, "Excuse me, little homie, I know you don't know me, but my name is Wendy and I like to blow trees, and from that point I never blow her off. Come from out of town, I like to show her off. They like to act tough, she like to tone them off and make them straighten up their hat, 'cause she know they soft. And when I grew up, she
showed me how to go downtown. And at nighttime, my face lit up, so astounding. I told her, and my heart is where she always be. She never messed with entertainers, cause they always leave. She said it felt like they walked and drove on me. Knew I was gang affiliated, got on TV and told on me. I guess that's why last winter she got so cold on me. She said, yeah, keep making that platinum and gold for me. Do you think about me now and then? Do you think about me now and then? Cause I'm coming home again. Man, home again. Maybe do you remember when fireworks at Lake Michigan? Oh, now I'm coming home again. Man, home again. Maybe do you remember when fireworks at Lake Michigan? Oh, now I'm coming home again. Maybe we could start again.
Digital
FM
online.
This is BBC Radio 1.
The biggest music star in the world has died.
The legendary king of pop, Michael Jackson, passed away on Thursday, June 25th, 2009 at 2:26 p.m.
Michael Jackson was 50 and planning his big comeback in the UK this summer. We'll have the latest on what happened.
It was early evening here in New York when the first reports came through.
Suddenly, word arrived from Southern California that Jackson had been rushed to the hospital. There were grave reports about his condition.
There was talk of a heart attack, claims he was in a coma. Before the news, fans were dreading.
It was horrible. I just got home from work. I was tired, and then, I didn't believe it at first.
I used to dream. I used to glance beyond the stars. Now I don't know where we are. Although I know we're drifting by.
Digital
FM
online.
This is BBC Radio 1.
Britain has a new Prime Minister.
Newsbeat.
Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I have accepted.
David Cameron has been confirmed as Britain's new Prime Minister. He arrived in Downing Street earlier, saying he wanted to lead a strong and stable government.
I came into politics because I love this country. I think its best days still lie ahead, and I believe deeply in public service.
He said he's aiming to form a full coalition with the Liberal Democrats and warned that the country is facing tough times ahead.
I think the service our country needs right now is to face up to our really big challenges, to confront our problems, to take difficult decisions, to lead people through those difficult decisions so that together we can reach better times ahead. One of the tasks that we clearly have is to rebuild trust in our political system.
Digital
FM
online.
This is BBC Radio 1.
More than 1 billion people watching around the world. Hundreds of thousands on the streets in front of me, and 2 people saying their vows.
I, William Arthur Philip Louis.
Take thee, Catherine Elizabeth.
Take thee, Catherine Elizabeth.
To my wedded wife.
To my wedded wife.
I, Catherine Elizabeth.
I, Catherine Elizabeth.
Take thee, William Arthur Philip Louis.
Take thee, William Arthur Philip Louis.
To my wedded husband.
To my wedded husband.
There were 2 big topics of conversation.
We're most excited about the kiss.
Really interested about this dress.
Maybe fitted at the top and then go out at the bottom. Maybe a long train.
While everybody else was getting a good look at Kate's dress on the telly, the fans out here had to rely on big speakers to hear the wedding ceremony from Westminster Abbey. And then just after 12:20, in an open-top carriage with the sun out, they appeared. Prince William and the new Duchess of Cambridge.
It's amazing. It makes you very proud to be British. These days don't come around very often.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. This only happens once.
Congratulations to Will and Kate and Royal Britannia!
Smile
Sick, the word David Cameron's used to describe the people behind the riots that have hit England over the past few days.
For too long, there's been a lack of focus on the complete lack of respect shown by these groups of thugs.
There was just people coming down the street, firebombing the cars.
I feel really shocked. I don't know why they are doing this.
The worst of last night's violence was in Manchester and Salford, where more than 100 people were arrested. Around 800 riot police were deployed in Manchester city centre, but were overwhelmed by the number of rioters. Firebombs were thrown at shops and looters made off with designer clothes, trainers, TVs, laptops and mobile phones. Ian's shop was ransacked.
Manchester has been wrecked. I mean, if this carries on for a few more nights, there won't be a city left.
These 16-year-olds were among the looters.
Why are you going to miss the opportunity to get free stuff that's worth loads of money? The government aren't in control. If there was, what better to do it, would we?
Scenes of burnt-out shops, broken windows, streets covered in debris and shattered glass have been all over the news, and it proved too much for some. Groups of people have been out trying to sort out the mess that's been left behind. Maddie Lowndes been to one clean-up in South London.
Hundreds of people turned up here armed with brooms and bin bags to clean up the mess left by the rioters.
Got more people here than were destroying stuff last night, which is just fantastic.
I think we just sort of need to show people that young people are actually not just the perpetrators of this, and we want to help out as well.
The Olympic Games are underway.
Newsbeat.
Close to 27 million people in the UK watched last night's opening ceremony for the Olympics. The Queen formally opened the Games after appearing in a video with the UK's most famous spy.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
David Beckham brought the Olympic flame by speedboat to East London, where 7 British teenage athletes lit the cauldron. Here's the chairman of the organising committee, Lord Coe.
To everyone in this stadium attending our opening ceremony, to every athlete waiting, ready, prepared to take part in these games, to everyone in every city and village in the world watching as we begin, welcome to London.
I can feel the love, can you feel it too? I can feel it all, I can feel it all.
16 days, the London Olympics finally came to a close last night. 80,000 people crammed into the Olympic Stadium to watch a memorable music closing ceremony. And there were more medals for Team GB too. Our sports reporter Simon Mundy has been in the park for the last 2.5 weeks, and he's there for us live again, one last time this lunchtime.
And what a different place it is today. We're on a special broadcasting balcony which looks out on the main entrance to the park. And after a magical couple of weeks, it really is all over. But the Games for the Brits, undoubtedly a triumph. Third in the table after the US and China with 65 medals in total. That's 29 gold, 17 silver and 19 bronze. The most successful Games for them in more than 100 years.
We will never forget the smiles, the kindness and the support of the wonderful volunteers, the much-needed heroes of these games.
Newsbeat.